4 hours. 2 hours. That's how long, or short I guess I should say, I was able to get the DualSense Edge battery life in one gaming session. But I'm going to explain exactly why the DualSense Edge has substantially less battery life than a standard PS5 DualSense controller, what you can do to extend battery life on a stock PS5 DualSense or the $200 DualSense Edge, and also a couple additional thoughts I have about the DualSense Edge after getting more stick time that I didn't mention in my initial review. Let's get it. This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles. You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons? We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers, and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller? Check out the controller playlist. Bing bong. Controller captain out. First of all, I want to get this out of the way right up front, right off Jump Street. I am still very satisfied with the DualSense Edge. I'm not let down whatsoever. However, there's definitely an Achilles heel or a weakness of the DualSense Edge, and that is going to be battery life, as the battery on board is about 33% smaller than a factory stock DualSense, which sports a 1560 milliamp hour between the haunches, as where the DualSense Edge has a measly 1050 milliamp hour slid deep between its thumbstick modules. I don't know how I was able to make that sound dirty, but it was filthy. Wipe it down. Now that is only slightly larger than the 1000 milliamp hour battery that came in the PS4 DualShock 4, which was a substantially smaller controller in actual visible dimensions. But why Sony went with a physically smaller battery with their premium DualSense Edge as opposed to their stock DualSense controller is of course to make room for the swappable thumbstick modules. Yes, these are still potentiometer based thumbstick modules, but if you ever envelop stick drift, you can simply slide these off the tracks. They're $20 from PlayStation Direct. Eventually they will be sold on Amazon, not only from Sony, but also third-party vendors will make their own. Potentially even the magnetic Hall effect sensors that we all craved and wish Sony would have put in this controller from the get-go. But because this controller has these swappable thumbstick modules, and also you could say it's because the two rear inputs, Sony having half domes and lever backs, which is their two rear buttons, trust me, that has absolutely nothing to do with needing to use a different size battery, because I have tested dozens of premium and pro controllers that have the identical battery on board of a stock factory OEM Sony controller, so that has zero to do with the issue at hand here. It's the swappable thumbstick modules, which are a godsend. If Sony's not going to take the magnetic Hall effect route, this is the next best thing. Instead of chucking out a $200 pro controller, $20 swappable module gets you back in the game. Plus you have the software to tighten up your dead zones, you might not even need to swap the modules. But because of this design, it does substantially cut into this bottom section, and that's something I didn't really touch on during my initial review during the ergonomics and comfort section. I even said, this feels just like a factory DualSense controller. Upon further use, it really doesn't, as the palm grips of the DualSense Edge have more of a rounded boomerang shape, and the stock DualSense cuts up quite a bit further, which is more comfortable, in my opinion, especially if you have not small hands, meaning medium or large. I'll take a medium with fries, please. Forgot the module was out. I was actually about to start going back to messing with it. There's no thumbstick there. So we now have substantially less battery life with the DualSense Edge, as well as less comfortable ergonomics, because you have less of a place for your middle fingers to hike up and hold on to those hand grips on the rear shell. Two issues that could have completely been avoided by Sony taking the magnetic Hall effect route for the thumbstick modules. However, that's not really profitable for them in the long run. They can't monetize us on the back end by flipping us around and taking us to Pound Town with those modules, which again, I mentioned are a good thing. I mean, we're kind of enjoying the railing as it's happening because we're not chucking out a new controller. This rant is getting weird quickly. Magnetic Hall effect sensors would have remedied the ergonomic issues and the battery life issues. But how shit is the shit when we're talking about this battery life? Hypebeast over here says 5 to 10 hours in their testing, but then they continue to say a stock DualSense gets 12 to 15 hours of battery life, so their credibility's gone. But what the hell is Hypebeast anyway? Isn't that like a clothing company or something? Why is this article even pulled up? Get it out of here. Tech Radar says 4 to 10 hours from a single charge, and quotes a statement from Sony where they listed 3 to 9 hours of battery life. Now, I alluded to it during the intro. I was able to, I'm not really proud of myself, but I purposely did everything to the DualSense Edge last night that I know accelerates depleting a battery and killing a controller, and I was able to take this brand new DualSense Edge, or damn near brand new, you saw the initial review, from a 100% charge, clearing my throat there, a 100% charge to absolutely dead in my hands in about 4 hours and 2 minutes. Playing the Dead Space remake, which is fantastic, comprehensive review coming in the near future. Exactly how a remake should be. They didn't really tinker with the core fundamentals, the story or anything, but revamped graphics, a ton of accessibility features, and of course, all the DualSense features like the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. Over here on the PS5 with a stock DualSense controller, and we're going to go ahead and extend the battery life. To do that, go to the settings, which is this cog icon in the top right, and shimmy slide yourself downtown to accessories. It's right there. Now, you might be a corporal or a private, but today you're a general. We're coming over here to controllers. Now you know the ranking system. Vibration intensity, that's going to be the haptic feedback feedback motors, which are incredibly immersive and they're an absolute joy. Go ahead and turn them off. They're draining your battery life. Trigger effect intensity. This is going to be the motors for the adaptive triggers, which get stiffer or lighter depending on the action on screen. Guns have different trigger breaking points. The gas and brake feels different in different cars, stuff like that. And it might also be an alternate firing mode in some games like Returnal and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It's really cool. Let's go ahead and turn it off. Now, if you wanted to take it a step further, you could do a teardown or disassembly of your DualSense, remove the haptic feedback motors to where they would be draining no electricity from your controller. You could not do that with the adaptive trigger modules because the triggers simply wouldn't work without those modules in place. Brightness of controller indicators on the PS4 DualShock 4 controller, that was going to be that light strip on the top, but with the PS5 DualSense, it is going to be that LED light strip around the touchpad. It's also going to be the status light as well as the mic mute indicator as well. All those buttons are going to get dimmed right here, right? That's not the right window. Now, you cannot fully disable this feature. I think it is because it is implemented or used in a lot of games. For example, Grand Theft Auto, if you got police behind you, it's going to be flashing red and blue lights in your face. Kind of cool and whatnot. If you're low on health in a lot of games, it'll start flashing red. I'd like to disable it. Simply not an option here, but you can dim it. Communication method, we are still going wireless with Bluetooth 5.0, but if you wanted to completely eliminate the problem of battery life, you could go wired via USB-C cable. If you are trying to use a DualSense controller wired on a PS5, I do recommend switching that ticker from Bluetooth to USB to actually take advantage of the additional speed of being tethered via that USB-C cable, because plugging in a USB-C cable to the top of your DualSense controller and then plugging in the USB-A end to your console is actually only charging the controller, but still utilizing the Bluetooth. Now, I have heard rumors around the old rumor mill down the grapevine, if you will, that being the active controller community all over the internet, that with a past patch or update, Sony has fixed that to where now when you do tether or plug in a DualSense controller, it automatically reverts that to the USB connection. However, I don't think that's the case because I've plugged in controllers to my PS5 and then checked that setting, and guess what? It still says I'm using Bluetooth. So maybe tick that box if you really want to use a wired connection on your PS5. There's also no drop-down box to disable the controller speaker, I guess because Sony's all about packing in those immersive features, which can be kind of gimmicky and definitely drain the battery life, but you do have a slider for volume. Guess what we're going to do? Turn it completely off. The final step here is going to be to keep your microphone muted. There is a setting which we're going to tick, which will automatically make it to where when you log in, your microphone becomes muted, which is great because a lot of new PS5 owners simply don't know that by default, every single time you log into your PS5, this microphone is constantly listening, which does drain a slight bit of battery life. But moreover than that, for privacy, you join a multiplayer lobby, everyone can hear what's going on in your living room. Your baby mama ripping on you about not taking out the trash. I can hear you trimming your toenails and you're breathing heavily as fuck into the controller. So just keep it muted. Now, I was very curious, is it actually going to drain more battery life having that LED light illuminated rather than just having the microphone constantly listening in the background? In my testing, that is not the case, and I do notice slightly better battery life by keeping my controllers constantly muted by using the method which I'm going to show you right now. Back in the main menu of settings, scroll midway down to sound, and if you don't have a headset plugged into the 3.5mm jack on the bottom of the controller, or you're not using a wireless headset with some kind of a dongle, then you're going to be using the built-in microphone on your controller, and by default, this is going to be on at all times. I recommend keeping it muted to where when you log in, it automatically mutes your microphone, which is confirmed by the fact all your controllers will have that little amber or yellow light illuminated. The next factor that will affect battery life is how much input is being given to the controller, i.e. how much downtime does the controller really have, where you're watching cutscenes, maybe you're playing Metal Gear Solid, where the game is a lot of cutscenes, right? But really, you're just setting down your DualSense controller for like 30-minute cutscenes. You know, me trying to go for the world record of shortest battery time on a DualSense Edge, basically constantly had my fingers on the old thumbsticks, niblets, giblets, triggers, action buttons, whatnot, playing Dead Space. I had to stop a couple times for a bathroom break, but other than that, plugged right through for about a 4-hour session with all of the features on. So the adaptive triggers, which are heavily used in Dead Space, the haptic feedback, again, constantly going off whenever there's explosions in the ship and there's jump scares, urine's coming out of me, vibrations are going into the controller, battery life is exiting the controller. It's all scientific, all very spiritual connection, raw guttural gaming experience. About 4 hours was the shortest I was able to get the DualSense Edge. However, I was able to squeak out about a 7-hour and 50-minute playthrough with all the features that I showed you off. Now, if you're using a DualSense Edge Pro controller, you do have to adjust these settings in a separate submenu, which is going to be DualSense Edge Wireless, which is underneath that general controller setting. The top option is going to be custom profiles. As you see, we have Kevin over here. We're going to edit that bad boy by turning trigger and vibration intensity off in here. And your light brightness is going to be right here. This is how we're able to squeeze more more battery life out of the DualSense Edge, which unfortunately has a 1050 milliamp hour battery, which is just 50 milliamp hours bigger than a PS4 DualShock controller, which was a small controller that had less shit going on inside of it. It had simple rumble force motors. It didn't have large, clunky, more accurate, immersive haptic feedback motors. It didn't have adaptive trigger modules that got stiffer or lighter depending on what the hell's going on screen. Now there's also a microphone that's constantly listening, but again, we know how to mute that to offer a little bit more battery life by keeping the microphone constantly muted. Or even if it doesn't, at least you have the privacy of not constantly broadcasting your game room to the world. I broadcast my game room to the world because I like it like that. That's my prerogative. But now that I've shown you how to extend the battery life of your stock or DualSense Edge controller, I'm going to go ahead and turn all this stuff back on because I like the immersion and I'll just continue to charge my controllers. And I have spares that I can rotate through, so I'll be okay. And a very interesting note, you actually cannot adjust the settings of a normal controller, a factory stalker, while you're using the DualSense Edge Pro controller. Kind of weird to me. Also, oh my gosh, golly, this needs mentioned. I don't think I've ever brought this up. So many steps to turn off a PlayStation controller as opposed to an Xbox. You just hold down the Xbox button, pops up. Do you want to turn off your console, restart the console, shut off the controller? PS5, no sweetie. Go ahead and hit the PlayStation button, come down to your accessories, DualSense Edge controller, turn it off there. Well, there's like 3 steps, man. Come on, 3 or 4. That's too many. Somebody's probably gonna drop in the comment section below some awesome little 2-step process that I should have known about for ages, and I'm gonna feel like a real nimwit. Another quick note, since this controller is using a different PCB, a different board than a stock DualSense controller, it actually doesn't communicate with the Brook adapters, the ones that I have tested on the channel, which allow you to use Xbox controllers on PlayStation, PlayStation controllers on Switch, vice versa, pretty much decimating platform-specific limitations with controllers, letting you use hundreds of third and first-party controllers. The DualSense Edge, because it just came out, and I guess Brook and other adapter companies haven't had a chance to work with it and figure out how to crack that nut, so to speak, you cannot use this controller on Xbox wirelessly or wired. It just didn't communicate with it, didn't even recognize it. I may do a disassembly or teardown of the DualSense Edge in the near future. However, if I do, it is going to be a purposeful video for a specific reason, i.e. I'm swapping that 1050 milliamp hour battery out for something better that I found online, like a third-party aftermarket option or something, or I'm customizing it, painting the shell, or doing something with it. I don't just want to tear it down, disassemble this controller for no reason. Considering Google's a good friend of yours and mine, I think there's probably already individuals out there that have already gotten inside the guts of this controller. So if I'm not going to be the first man to conquer Everest, so to speak, why am I going to dig my boots in the snow? I'm going to get back to playing Dead Space Remake. Not for very long though, not for longer than 4 hours at a time. Not with this bad boy. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.